What up, what up, what up, comrades? This is Victor Coronado alongside Carlos Cruz Mosquera. This is ANTICONQUISTA. Please check us out at anticonquista.com. We're on all platforms, all social media platforms. Please like, please subscribe, please share, please get the word out. We really appreciate the support that we've been getting over the last several weeks. And so we appreciate all of y'all. Carlos, how you doing?
All good, bro. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Still trying to get better from this cough.
Now we're used to your coughing, but it's part of the show now.
Yeah. So last week we weren't able to bring folks an episode. I think this is the first week that we've missed. There's a reason for that. It was just a little hectic for all of us. Comrade Nick and I were actually in DC as part of and that's my 120-pound Rottweiler, if you can hear him in the background, as part of the call to get President Biden to essentially overturn the additional 238 sanctions that were put on Cuba under the Trump administration, and essentially end the blockade against Cuba. Of course, we'll get into it, but the opposite has happened, and we'll talk a little bit about maybe what happened on Sunday. But let's get right into it. And I'm going to apologize to all audience by saying, like, there was a lot that happened over the last couple of weeks. So if we missed something and you feel like we needed to cover something, maybe we can cover it on the next episode. And we apologize that we can't get to everything, right? We're trying to get as much as possible in a little bit of time. So exciting stuff over the last couple of weeks. We're going to get into right into what's been going on in Peru. And give me 2 seconds here as I grab my notes. Here we go. So Pedro Castillo is now officially the president of Peru. He was sworn in earlier this week, and he's been fascinating to cover, to try to research and try to figure out what the deal is with him. He immediately appointed someone by the name of Guido Bellido to his prime minister position. Mr. Bellido is a Marxist. Mr. Bellido spoke Quechua at his as part of the swearing in for Castillo, and Bellido also has defended members of the Shining Path in prior remarks. So there's a lot of controversy surrounding him. He also, now President Castillo has also appointed Hector Bejar, 85-year-old former guerrilla and senior Peru Libre party official. Again, Peru Libre is the party that helped Castillo, catapulted Castillo into office. It's a self-described Marxist-Leninist political party. And so he appoints these two individuals. He waits to appoint his finance minister, which ends up being Pedro Frank, a moderate. But what's interesting is that after his speech and after these appointments, the markets immediately responded. The markets not in a good way, right? And this is how the international finance system works, right? This is how imperialism works. But I'll wait for your response after I just say one more thing. Castillo said he's not going to accept the salary of president. He's not going to sit in the presidential palace, which he said it's essentially a colonial palace. It comes from it has a colonial name, so on and so forth. And he said he rejected that, and he also called for the drafting of a new constitution. For a few other things I want to touch on, but I'll stop there and wait for your response, Carlos.
Yeah, no, I think before, whilst Castillo's candidate and before he was sworn in, the left was, and I think us, I guess us as socialists and communists, we were being a bit on the safe side, like not jumping into conclusions, because we know that, for example, in Ecuador, when Lenin Moreno took over from Correa, we were all hopeful. We were not even hopeful. We were quite sure because he was from the same party, same line. His discourse, his policies on paper all looked good, and then he did a complete U-turn. And so we're cautious, coming into this. I think a few weeks back, when they were still counting the votes, or not counting it but making it official, we said we didn't want to jump in and say, he's definitely going to be a leftist guy. I think now with the inauguration speech, with the appointments to his cabinet, it's safe to say that the guy seems to be sticking to his word. I think we can be a bit more hopeful about him. We can be a bit more sure about him. The cabinet, in terms of, for us, radical lefties, radical Latin Americans in the diaspora, I think it looks like a government that we need to really look out for, and do our best in terms of making sure that it isn't of course it's going to be attacked, but making sure that we're doing our part in terms of combating that propaganda that's beginning to come out. With the appointments of with the Guido Bellido, there's already the liberal Western media, BBC, The Guardian, etc. Alert. We're alert because the world, the international community is alert because there's Marxist, because Pedro Castillo appointed a Marxist prime minister in Peru, and they were talking about him being homophobic, talking about him being apologetic to terrorism, because putting things into context, like what he had said about the Shining Path, the communist organization, the Maoist organization in Peru. He was saying that they're Peruvians too, that, and it isn't to say that you're justifying some of the things that happened during that conflict, which is a very complex, difficult internal conflict that they had, and we're not apologetic to some of the things that happened, but the motives for some of those people involved in the Shining Path, they were revolutionary. They made mistakes, but there were people in the Shining Path that were good and that are good today. We here in the UK, we have a few ex Shining Path people in the community who are like really important to the community in terms of teaching us socialist values, communist values, teaching our children. They're not these devils that they made them out to be. So the Western media is on high alert, and I think for us that's a good thing. It shows that Pedro Castillo is really going down a path where he's really siding with the radical leftist movement, the leftist project in Latin America. And the speech, the inauguration speech, where he's saying he's not taking these are all symbolic acts, but it's important. It gives kind of Evo Morales vibes with the way he's dressed, with the indigenous attire, and not taking the wages, and not wanting to take power in the presidential palace named after Pizarro, the famous and the infamous colonizer and really murderer of indigenous people in Peru, and talking and emphasizing, socialist values, boosting education, the budget to the education system. These are all things that Peruvians, working class Peruvians, the majority of Peruvians welcome, but which the capitalist elites are very wary of, are very preoccupied with. The response of the markets and the investors shows that, but yeah, hopefully they can stick down that path. Unfortunately, and it isn't always straightforward. Unfortunately, Pedro Castillo, I think, was forced a little bit to appoint Pedro Frank, but it's difficult, and I guess he had to. He felt like he needed to compromise. I think it was the last person appointed to his cabinet as finance minister. He is, I think a former World Bank guy. He isn't great. He says that they're not going to nationalize companies, and multinationals aren't going to be chased out, and that what they want to do is for the multinationals to keep some of the profits made in the country, which is cool, but it isn't socialism, it isn't communism. So we do have to watch out for that as well. But yeah, I think overall, in terms of what Castillo's doing, I think it looks good for us. It looks good for the continent. It's dignity for us. It's something to be cautiously happy about. I would say.
I totally agree with your assessment there, and again, to the armchair revolutionaries in the West who are purists and want to now condemn that one move, right? So this is all a chess game, and I'm going to keep saying that. If you've never done electoral politics, especially, and I hate to say this, but I'm going to say this: if you've never won a political campaign, it is very crass. It is extremely crass, and so this is what we were waiting for. We saw sort of glimpses of this. We had suspicions that he may be, somebody that we could somewhat, let's say, integrate into this new leftist movement. But we, like, as you said, we weren't sure. Now we can confirm those suspicions. And I would encourage folks to check out some of the stuff that Evo Morales is saying, who's been very active on social media, and talking, continues to talk about this integration that's happening in Latin America, this anti-colonial movement, right? This anti-imperialist movement happening in Latin America. This move away from U.S. dependency, right? Or having the U.S. to tell us what to do, or meddle in our business, and so on and so forth. So this is a step in the right direction. And the fact that he's calling for the drafting of the new constitution, again, that he won by a slim margin. People in power are not going to just give up power. That's not how it works, right? If someone's in power, they're not going to just give it up. So he's going to have to deal with a Congress that
that's another thing, Victor, that we have to be cautious about as well. Is that, again, like, Castillo seems to be sticking to what he was promising, as a leftist candidate. But there's a Congress dominated by the right. They're going to try and block, and they're going to block some of the things that Castillo wants to do. And I hope that Castillo will have, I really do hope that Castillo will, can use some executive power to be like, all right, you guys want to block me this way, but I can go around it, make an executive decision, as happens in Venezuela and has happened in Venezuela, So, but yeah, again, go on.
He's going to have to create counter institutions.
Right.
That's what's going to need that. There's a reason why he's calling to draft a new constitution. There's a reason for that. Right. All right. So, and
it isn't a coincidence that he appointed Guido Bellido as prime minister, because he is probably the top person in Peru that is calling for a new constitution to replace the 1993 constitution that was drafted and confirmed under Alberto Fujimori, out of all people. So yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence.
So Evo Morales and Bolivian President Luis Arce were also in attendance, and they immediately something called a binational cabinet was created between the two countries to deepen ties and work on infrastructure projects together. Moreover, talks between the MAS political party, the Movement Towards Socialism in Bolivia, and Peru Libre Party in Peru, right, the Marxist-Leninist party that just helped Castillo get elected, talks between those two political parties began as they continue to, so as they talk about how do we continue to integrate and fight imperialism. So again, these are exciting things. These are very, very exciting things, and these are baby steps in the right direction. A place, and especially in Peru, that they've never seen anything like this before. We've never seen anything even marginally close to somebody like Castillo getting into actual power. So
actually, there was a guy called Ollanta Humala, who served maybe I forget, but maybe like a decade ago, for a few years. And he was like, the kind of giving socialist vibes, socialist, using socialist terms in his candidacy and so on, but ended up selling out. And actually, Ollanta Humala came from a revolutionary family, and his family disowned him when he got into power and started, obviously siding with the capitalists and the old ruling elite. So they did come close, and it shows that the Peruvian people have been wanting this change. They wanted that change with Ollanta Humala, and they didn't get it. Not because they didn't vote for it, because they did vote for it. They thought that this guy would come in and represent the people, which he didn't. So now is a second chance, and hopefully Castillo does finally do some good for not just some good, but do some revolutionary work to better the conditions of Peruvian people. At least the first steps. We don't think that. At least myself, I don't think that Castillo is going to come and it's going to turn everything around. But at least the first step towards that necessary change.
Absolutely, I remember Humala. Humala didn't fit the bill at all. All right. So, anything else you want to say about Peru and Castillo before we move on to the other headlines?
No, apart from just say that we do need to be on the lookout to defend Pedro Castillo and the new government, and not just the government, the people who have put that government into power, the people who are in a way in power at the moment, and which have put the West on high alert. You're starting to see, like, if you put Pedro Castillo on Google, and you're starting to see like alarms because this and that, and the propaganda has started against him and his cabinet. So we do need to look out for that and make sure that we defend them the best way we can. Obviously, us as Anticonquista are going to be combating whatever comes out, in the best way we can, making infographics and writing articles and videos and so on. So please do support our work as well. Absolutely.
This couldn't come at a worse time for the empire. I mean, because you had, again, think about what's been happening over the last couple of weeks with the with the orchestrated protests in Cuba. And then the way that Latin America and the rest of the world has responded to, the United States is completely isolated in its position, right? And so then you get Pedro Castillo get inaugurated, and he makes these appointments to his cabinet. And this will segue perfectly into the headlines over here. So let's go right into Mexico. On Simón Bolívar's birthday, July 24th, AMLO, President Obrador, called for a new independent organization to replace the Organization of American States, or the OEA or OAS. In the same speech, he praised Cuba for being an example of resistance, proposing the idea that the entire country should be declared a World Heritage Site. That, again, that was mostly symbolic, but it was important. He said a lot of things there. He said that Cuba should be defended, that Cuba is a sovereign state, that the United States, that he's going to push President Biden to lift the blockade. And then not only that, but then he committed to sending actual aid to Cuba, which we'll get into in a little bit. One other thing, and then we'll get on to the next country, and I'll wait for your response before we move on. Mexico's foreign minister, Marcelo Ebrard, told the Washington Post that a $3 billion drug war partnership with the U.S., this initiative called the Merida Initiative, is pretty much dead, and it doesn't work. And then they're going to be doing their own thing, The U.S. is insisting that they could still figure something out with Mexico, but it looks like Mexico is just saying, you know what, we're going to ditch this thing altogether. But I'll wait your to hear your response on the headlines there in Mexico, from Mexico.
Yeah, on that last one, again, like with the history that we have of the war on drugs in Latin America and being led by the US, the investments they make in terms of war really is what it is. War against our people. They use the so-called war on drugs to not really for anything to do with drugs, but really to, at least in the, you know, if you look at what happens in Colombia, the studies that happen in Colombia and in Mexico and Bolivia, much of that money, the majority of that money really goes towards counterinsurgency, counter-revolution, leftist parties, and, you know, destroying what might be of revolutionary parties or the most advanced parties or the most advanced movements. So yeah, that's good news, and hopefully they keep to it, and you know, I imagine they'll, well, you know, they don't want to. Again, it's complicated because I imagine that they don't want to piss them off completely, and you know, because of trade with the US. But hopefully they can really diminish it as much as they can.
Any thoughts on you know, AMLO's support, you know, for Cuba and dissing the El OEA? Yeah,
I think what my view of AMLO is that politically he can be on point much of the time politically when it comes to Venezuela, his foreign policy on Venezuela and Cuba and so on is on point. But then again, as we always say, as I always bring up on this show, that doesn't mean that we don't have the criticism when it comes to the economy, and you know, I'm not going to say that it's all down to him or that it's even mainly about him. It's about the economy that exists in Venezuela. AMLO didn't come in saying he was going to change the economy. He's a really in terms of the economic system that still exists in Mexico, he's a social democrat, really a capitalist. Okay, not a capitalist, but he's sympathetic to capitalism. He works within the framework of capitalism. He's not for a socialist revolution or a socialist society, a socialist economy. But then, you know, he'll do things. Of course, there are reforms that are beneficial to Mexican people, and we do have to recognize that using some of the profits made under the capitalist economy, you know, trying to put that into public services and so on, so that, you know, it's not like an outright right-wing person being in power and completely, you know, ignoring the needs, the conditions of the people, but yeah, and so I would say, like, politically, all of these things that he does are on point. Solidarity with Cuba, solidarity with Venezuela, and wanting to get rid of the OAS is perfect. You know, we need more of that from AMLO, more of that from Castillo now coming in, and in Bolivia, where we have another leftist government. Like, we need definitely more of a pushback against the OAS, who really is a powerful force for empire in our region at the moment.
Absolutely. So continuing on, let's go to Dominican Republic. This is more of a cultural thing, and this kind of hit me. You know, I'm Dominican American, so I had to bring this up. I was getting texts and you know, calls from all over. Merenguero and music legend Johnny Ventura, also known as El Caballo, the horse, died at the age of 81. 3 days of national mourning was decreed, and flags were flown at half staff. You know, I grew up listening to Johnny Ventura, and so you know, my mother, you know, who speaks, again, I'll remind folks, my mother speaks no English to this day. She's in Perth Amboy in New Jersey, speaks no English, and I could just, you know, when I think about somebody like Johnny Ventura, I just think of my mother in the 80s and 90s, mopping and sweeping while she has the music blasted, and we're listening to people like Johnny Ventura. So I had to, you know, of course, this was something that you touched a lot of Dominicans. And I don't care too much for Johnny Ventura's politics. He was an actual politician as well. I don't really care too much for his politics, but as a cultural legend, and there was a lot of social consciousness, within his music. And so even a lot of leftist folks, I actually got some text from a WhatsApp text from some of my comrades out in the Dominican Republic sending me songs that kind of speak to that, the fact that, again, that Johnny Ventura would have songs that try to raise the social consciousness, particularly among Black Dominicans, and even with Haitians and whatnot, and the plight of the Haitian, and so in that spirit, we all Dominicans, I think, all are celebrating his life and are mourning his death.
Not just Dominicans. I've seen Colombians and Venezuelans. I think the Dominican music is very, very popular in the whole region. So yeah, I have seen a lot of that on social media.
Yeah, you can't go in here in the East Coast. You can't go to a Latin party without hearing merengue or bachata. That's just. I went to a very quick anecdote. I went to a party. It was a birthday party, and the place was packed full of Mexicans. So I'm waiting. They're playing typical Mexican music. And again, we're out here on the East Coast. This is Jersey. So some folks are dancing, and I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. All of a sudden, the DJ plays merengue and bachata, and every single Mexican in that place was dancing. And I'm like, oh my God. Like that's when it hit me, like the influence of the Dominican diaspora out here in the East Coast. I'm sure if you go to the West Coast, it's a completely different story, right? So, but out here in the East Coast, it's Dominican culture in the diaspora here has influenced, I think, other Latinos and
you'll be surprised how much bachata and merengue. I mean, we have merengue in Colombia as well, but even Dominican merengue and bachata is really popular here in the Latin American community in London as well. So yeah, it's crazy, like a little island, but it has a lot of power culturally.
Yeah, absolutely. Dominicans' problem is that we party a little bit too much. So I can say that, we need to, and we have a great revolutionary history, but that's a self-criticism amongst ourselves that we say we need to do a little bit less partying. We're really good at partying.
It could be simultaneous. We don't have to get rid of it. It could be simultaneous.
Yeah. That's true. Continuing on with the headlines, African swine fever. African swine fever is limiting pig shipments on the island, and so there's a big concern over that. In the late 70s, I think that was the last time there was like a big to do about this, and they literally slaughtered every single hog in the Dominican Republic at that time to just completely get rid of it. It's not humans aren't affected by it, but it just it's a huge issue with the pigs, and then of course it affects trade with the U.S. and whatnot. Prensa Latina and other media outlets are reporting that the economy is expected to end this year with a 6 to 7% growth. I say that and understanding that, again, the economy is and the political system is ran by the oligarchs. So I just want to be clear about that. COVID-19 is slowing down significantly in the Dominican Republic. We had just back-to-back days of 0 deaths reported due to COVID-19, and so it seems like there's a complete slowing down significantly. And then yesterday, a caravan of different progressive organizations marched in the capital of Santo Domingo to express their solidarity with the Haitian Republic, reflecting an anti-interventionist and non-interference position. And so I thought that was interesting as well. Any thoughts on any of that before we move on to Puerto Rico?
Just to say, I'm glad that the Dominican Republic is doing well in terms of COVID. Like the rest of the region, some of the countries, and in Peru, where Pedro Castillo has just taken power, is like probably the worst hit in Latin America. So and it also goes to show the politics. Maybe not in the Dominican Republic, where the government I don't think is great either. But you do see the countries that have the more right-wing governments are the ones who are doing the worst. And we've said it in the show before, it shows the correlation between a socialist or leftist leaning government providing the help that is necessary for the people, whilst places like Colombia, Brazil, Peru, up until before Castillo, super right-wing countries, they've just let the virus rip through the country. So yeah, no, that's good news in terms of Dominican Republic, at least having some being able to deal with it a little bit more than the rest of the region.
Absolutely. Moving on to Puerto Rico, only $21 billion of the $65 million earmarked for relief funds have reached the island of Puerto Rico. These funds are to address, again, still years later, the aftermath of Hurricanes Maria and Irma, and some of the other. I think we believe we covered this. So this might be a type, not a typo, but I think I added this in by mistake. But I think we covered this a few weeks ago. So I mean, that again, that's still there's still questions about all of that. Now moving on to Cuba. Again, there's just a lot of stuff here about Cuba. We could talk a little bit about what let's start there. Actually, let's. Last week, I along with Conrad Nick Ayala from ANTICONQUISTA, we went, got on a bus. We left the People's Church on 111th in Lexington in New York. People's Church, for folks who don't know, that's where the Young Lords did some work and some damage back in the day. And yes, Carlito Rovira had invited me and actually all of us to go. I know you're in the UK, but he invited all of us to show up. So Nick and I went. It was amazing. I got to meet some great people, some sincere revolutionaries. You and I will talk offline about some of the folks that I've met, because I haven't talked to you about that yet. But there's a couple of folks there that I think are worthy of being interviewed and being guests. So we get to Washington D.C. Carlito wasn't actually able to make it to DC. He was under doctor's orders to not kind of stay still and just be home. He's still recovering from an issue, but we were led by former Black Panther Shep, and I'm blanking on his last name, but he's just known as Shep, one of the original Black Panthers from the New York chapter, I volunteered to do security, so I did some security. Unfortunately, Nick is not here with us. I would love to hear his experience, because my experience was very different than Nick's. Nick's was in the crowd talking to folks and got to experience, if you will, the event. I was doing security, and just from my perspective, well, let me back up. So Shep, brother Shep gave us specific instructions of not making sure that we didn't engage with the Gusanos. We did a little quick, go check it out. So somebody went, checked out the scene. To see what was going on. We were assigned one area, the Gusanos were assigned another area. We get there, and let me just say, I really wish a lot of folks would experience this, and I wish it would have gotten more coverage. Our folks, again, were very disciplined, very peaceful. Our folks, and that's not to say, a few times our folks weren't got a little out of hand, and that's only because they were provoked, and it was my job to, pardon me for getting a little gangster. I had to make sure they back the fuck up and calm the fuck down, right? Because our job was to not engage. And let me go back. So I really wish people would, just the audience in general, people in general would be able to see that and see how those folks, and I'm going to say those folks, the Cuban Americans, the Gusanos, they're extremely violent. They're extremely disrespectful, real crude, rude. Some of the things that they were just saying to us while we were just there, holding up signs and singing songs, and we had guest speakers. We had some people doing some of the music stuff and whatnot. I just wish people could see the contrast, because though the people on the other side, the gusanos on the other side, I mean, they're a scary group of people. And then to say things like us, and I'm going to just repeat it on air here, you know, they would say stuff like, I hope all you communists get shot. I hope all you communists die. I wish you nothing but the worst. The cops should arrest all of you. All of you deserve to be in jail. So, I mean, and then they kept none of our people. There was a barricade. None of our people got nowhere near close to the barricade. We were way over on our side. I'm talking about a good 100, maybe 200 feet, you know, something along those lines, just way, way far away from the barricade. We were just stood in our designated area. We could have, if we wanted to go to the barricade, we had access to go all the way up until that point, right? The gusanos, not only did they go up until up to that point of the barricade, they would cross the barricade, and little by little were forming, basically creating formations and just inching closer and closer and closer to us. I do got to say, for whatever it's worth, and I'm always leery of police officers, I do got to say the police officers that were there that day, in that moment, in that time, they did their job and they kept us safe. And in fact, there was coordination between us working security and the police. And they were stoic. They didn't give a fuck. They just kept telling the gusanos, get the fuck over on your side. And for that, I'm grateful, because those people were, it was scary, because we would have been outnumbered, and those people were, you could just see it in their faces. They wanted blood. Like if the cops weren't there, it would have gotten violent, and not because we were provoking it. It was because they continue to agitate. They continue to come over and cross. You'll have individuals that would just continue to just come over and agitate us, and then security would have to talk to the police officer and say, hey, get this guy over on their side. It was just a real ugly scene, just all on their side, you know. And all I had to do was, every once in a while, when one of their people came over to agitate one of our people, sometimes our people would get worked up, and sometimes I had to tell my people, okay, back the fuck up. And that's all I had to do. But those people are just, they're scary. They're scary. You know, and they're disrespectful, very crude, very rude. And it's just the irony of all this, because we're the communists who want to torture everybody and lock everybody up for thinking differently, and these are just, you know, they want to go back to pre-1959. They want all their shit back, you know, and they want to be able to, you know, run Havana and Cuba like it was a casino, like it's a casino or something like that. I mean, it's just, those people are just nasty. I'll wait for your response. I'll stop there, but it was just crazy.
I think they're like super entitled. You know, these super entitled, wealthy Latin Americans, wealthy Cubans. I did see a video. I don't know if you guys' action was connected to something called, I think it's called Puente de Amor, which I think is like.
So Puentes de Amor, Carlos Lasso is the guy who was our keynote speaker, if you will, or a key speaker, featured speaker. He's all over the news right now. CNN interviewed him, everybody. And yeah, so he's Carlos Lasso is part of Puentes de Amor, which is basically, you know, they take a position of, and he's a former, by the way, he's got a very thick accent, bien cubano. And he's a veteran. He's a U.S. veteran. And his position is very clear. He's like pretty much along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, but you know, he's not a capitalist. He's not a communist. He just wants to normalize relations. And he says, you know, when I do these polls, and he does these, I don't think they're very scientific polls, but when they poll Cubans in Miami, he asks them very basic questions. And there's general agreement that if you just kind of break down, nuanced in a nuanced way, these different the impacts of the blockade, that even just most Cubans, not all, but most Cubans would be against a lot of these things, these things that we're doing to Cuba. And so, you know, he's making an appeal to folks who can try to make sense of some of this stuff without getting all irrational and all emotional. And he does make an appeal to Cuban Americans. Of course, the gusanos made him seem like he was the devil. And if you listen to this guy, I mean, you know, you want to talk about people who are militant. I mean, we had those speakers. Carlos Lasso is not a militant, radical, revolutionary communist.
That's what I'm saying, Victor. Like, so I saw a video of a Cuban, supposedly a Cuban American journalist, but he was definitely not a journalist. Not even like, he was just straight up like going up to people at the protest or the place where these Puente de Amor people were, and he was saying like, "Are you even Cuban? Why are you here? You don't know what happens in my country." Just like being like super aggressive and super, and I could hear people saying like, "Don't respond to them, just leave them." And so they were and where I saw this video, we'll get into it because it's the same guy, Alain Lambert Sanchez, or Cuban paparazzi cubano. So he was he put that on his live, showing like, look, they weren't even responding because they had nothing to say. But you could hear, and because his audience is Spanish, they might not hear what's going on really. But you could hear people at the protest saying, "Don't engage with them. They're trying to what do you call it? They're trying to provoke you. So don't engage with them." But the way they were painting it was that no, they were being quiet and stepping back because they had nothing to say. And that's how they distort, what really happens.
Yeah, and the thing is, Puentes de Amor, they're a lot of them are Cuban. They're Cuban, like they are, and we were all of us on our side were given specific instructions over and over and over. Do not engage. Do not engage. And let's be real about this stuff. If something were to go down, and in terms of a fisticuff of something violent, who you think is going to get arrested? Who you think is going to go home that night? Our people were going to get arrested, right? Those
and
people
even if they get arrested, these are like probably wealthy Cubans who you can pay bail and pay lawyer fees and so on.
Right. So our folks did a fantastic job through and through. I mean, it was scary because we were outnumbered, and how violent the discourse was and the rhetoric was coming from the Gusano side. I mean, it just, it wasn't even, there was one guy who came over on our side at the end and engaged in a very peaceful way to try to have a dialogue. And he was actually Afro-Cubano. With the exception of that one case, I mean, these people were just, they were disrespectful. The rhetoric was vile. I mean, just, again, vile stuff coming out of these people. Like to say, and we had some of us had, there were little kids around us and stuff like that, and then to say, I hope all of you die. I hope all of you get shot. All of you deserve to be dead. That, like, just crazy stuff. Like, none of our people were saying that to them. Nobody was saying anything to them. Nobody was, it was just a crazy scene. It was just crazy. But you know what? Let's get into Mr. Paparazzi. I mean, now you brought it up. Go ahead and get into this guy who I told you off air. The weirdest shit. I'm getting, I check him out, to do our research and stuff. I'm not subscribed to his YouTube channel. I don't have his alert, and I'm still getting alerts from him, which is just odd. And I'm looking at his numbers. He goes on the live, and he's getting like 30,000 views in an hour. Like, it's crazy, which raises my antenna, right? Raises our antenna. So, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, just to say, in terms of the numbers, I'm pretty sure they're being propped up somehow. I know that the people he works with as Cyber Cuba or Cyber Cuba, they're like there are these like techie Cuban guys. So I'm pretty sure they know how to prop the numbers up. And the likes and the subscriptions. Like, I think that's quite a well-known thing. It isn't a conspiracy theory. I think it's quite a well-known thing that YouTubers, influencers, even famous people prop up their numbers somehow using bots, using fake accounts, and using these techie people that know how to do that. So I think there is an element of that. However, the guy is quite popular, especially among working class Latin Americans and working class Cubans. And so we've kind of you know, we tried to combat his propaganda in the last few days. We made an infographic where we show, like, we use reliable sources, even their own sources, to show that the guy is really not interested in any type of social justice, any type of you know, he claims to be for Cuban people and so on, but we know that he really is there to just receive money, which is what he's doing. He receives money from Cyber Cuba, a media company co-founded and directed by two very right-wing, I would say extreme right, Cubans who live in Spain. They call themselves exiles, but I would say that they're self-exiled. They've gone to Spain. They received nearly $1 million, sorry, €1 million a year. They don't make public who sponsors them exactly. So yeah, you know, as we pointed out in our infographic, the most likely sponsors of Cyber Cuba and by extension Paparazzi Cubano is you know, U.S. organizations like NED, Freedom House, USAID, and just really like rich right-wing donors who have an interest in overthrowing the Cuban government. And this guy, Elaine, well, he calls himself Elaine Rodriguez or Paparazzi Cubano on social media, but his real name is Elaine Lambert Sanchez. And yeah, this guy, they use this guy to he's very popular in Cuba. People watch him in Cuba, and he is the one who really has influenced people to go out to march. And I would say he's popular among the people who are anti-government, who, you know, who want to go out to the marches and stuff. And as we pointed out in the infographic, he claims to have had to flee Cuba because he was being persecuted for being a journalist and for being independent media, when in reality the reason why the police had arrested him, and he wasn't charged, but the reason why they arrested him was because he went and confronted another YouTuber who criticized him for organizing right-wing marches in Havana, and he broke into his house with a whole load of other right-wingers and you know, his right-wing mob broke into his house, and I think that's an offense anywhere in the world. So yeah, that's why he got arrested, and then he painted that to be, you know, about persecuting him for his media work, which isn't the case at all. So yeah, the guy's just a fraud. If you watch his YouTube videos, he's really, like, he gives very priesty pastor vibes. Like, there's no facts involved. Very Trump kind of style. No facts, just anecdotes. Oh, a family member said this, a family member said that. He was showing a video earlier of a woman saying that her husband was dying, her kids are dying, her dad died the other day, but no evidence, no actual evidence. There's no way to verify whether who this woman is, where if she's even in Cuba, how, if her relatives are dying, how have they died? And, you know, it's just unreliable information, you know, and it's what right-wing people do. They use anecdotes. Is what they've done in China with the Uyghur situation, where the sources that they use, the most academic source that they use are, you know, this right-wing evangelical guy who says his mission on earth is to destroy communism, right, and particularly Chinese communism.
Right.
So yeah, he's, you know, the same style, no evidence, no reliable sources, and his style is ridiculous. We really need to cancel.
I can only
him.
stomach him for so long, because I watch this, so I'll tune in here and there. I just can't, you know, because it's such ridiculous. Like, if you don't, I hate to say this, but if you're just not I could see how the average person could get caught up in that, right? I could see that. I could see I could be very effective. But to the trained eye, I mean, literally, when he starts the program, it's like this 2-minute video, almost like a hip hop reggaeton, que se yo que vaina video, right? And he's got the video vixens and stuff like that. Yeah. Then you go, he's got these weird, music in the background that he plays.
Yeah. He uses like horror
and grim.
He uses horror sounds.
Yeah.
Like bringing,
as he has advertisements on the bottom for some product or something, or like the whole thing is just so sketchy. And it's like, I could see how the average person who, again, we just keeps from the time when you're a little kid, you get told Fidel Castro's evil and Cuba's evil and or the communist dictatorship of Cuba is evil. Everything about that is just the worst of the worst. And then you get onto this guy's, YouTube channel, and you're like, oh, this confirms everything that I've been told since I was a little kid, right? And it's not real journalism. It's not, like Carlos was saying, you can't verify any of this stuff. It's not credible. It's just a bunch of anecdotes.
At best, Victor, at best, is entertainment. I can see from, unfortunately, some of our people, working class people, we don't have access to resources. We don't have access to education or thinking about like where's our information coming from? Is it a reliable source? But you could see why they would be maybe attracted to some of his videos with the sound effects, with the showy. It's got quite a good production. That USAID and Ned and Freedom House money, kind of showing that he's got a great production, great financial backers. Helping him out in that sense, so you can see like why some people might be attracted to following this guy and to listening to him, but it's ridiculous. Like it
is. We
really do need to do something about him. I would encourage our people to go to our Instagram and share our post. Just share our post. He in his YouTube video says like, they're blocking me. The best way to unblock me is by giving a like and subscribing. That's how we combat. Nobody's blocking him.
Right.
He uses this, the victim. I'm a victim, and the way you can help me is by liking and subscribing and watching my videos. In other words, by really giving him money through residuals that he gets from YouTube, views, etc., plus his wages from Cyber Cuba.
And it's individuals like him, and there are plenty of other individuals and organizations in Miami, right here in Jersey, that are directing traffic, are trying to direct traffic over there in Cuba and calling shots and trying to foment a civil war. Like, this is what's happening. And so, one of the headlines that here, let me jump ahead to this headline. So this was I was going to read this last week. Of course, again, I went to the protest. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis calls on President Biden to provide internet access to the Cuban people. And this is like a big theme right now. It's like, how do we get internet? What? So ask yourself this question, right? Why is this so important to the Americans and to the Cuban Americans and all these people who are because they realize that this is they got to try to win the hearts and minds of people some way, somehow, because everything else that they've done hasn't worked. So terrorism hasn't worked, right? Pigs didn't work. Funding all these groups over there, that's not working. We live in the information technology age where this media war, again, when you have President Miguel Diaz-Canel saying we need to win this war, this battle of ideas on the internet, this is how they're getting to people. And so this guy there's a reason why we pointed this guy out. There's many more like him, but we wanted to target him because he's like, all of a sudden he's become extremely popular.
And it's not just about Cuba either, because I'm pretty sure the guy's not like very. I think he became quite popular in Cuba when he used to do live streams of like concerts and just doing lives like out on the street without any commentary. And I think he was popular because of that. I think his commentary, his political commentary on Cuba, in Cuba, isn't popular. It might influence some people, some anti-government people to go on the streets, which as we saw, like it was just hundreds or, you know, at best a few thousand people.
Right.
But also what's important is that he's perfect for a place like Colombia, a place like anywhere in Latin America where people would be attracted to his to the way he speaks. He's like a pastor. He's very shouty. He's very entertaining. His music and so on. So that's why we do definitely need to combat people like him. Not single him out. I mean, you know, we do our best at combating his misinformation and showing, you know, with reliable sources that you know, he's basically fake news or propagating fake news. But yeah, you know, we really do need to combat people like him and right-wing propaganda on Cuba in general.
Absolutely. So let's continue on with some of these headlines. So it's been an incredible 2 weeks. So Biden, I went to the protests in DC to tell, you know, so we can tell, you know, as a community, to tell Biden, hey, you know, you campaigned one way, now we're also asking for this as well. And he instead, what does he do? You know, he sits down with Cuban Americans. He has one set of sanctions 1 week, and then the next week just another set of sanctions. And so last week he put sanctions on the Cuban Security Ministry and the Interior Ministry for Special Forces. This week sanctions were placed on the Cuban police force and 2 Cuban leaders. And then he's promising more sanctions. He's saying there's more to come. Now, understand, a lot of these sanctions people are saying, experts are saying, are just symbolic. None of these Cuban officials would ever travel to the United States. They have no pending itinerary over here. Like, they're not coming over here. But you know, it's interesting, right? That this is the way he would go. And then the CNN.
Can I just stop you on in that particular thing? I can't remember where I read this, but those sanctions to those individuals are important because some of those ministers are in charge of the people in charge of making deals outside. So by putting sanctions on those particular ministers and important ministers, what they're doing is indirectly they halt trade deals, they halt political deals, they halt all types of things. So it is destructive, very destructive. And
what you're speaking to is the fact,
not just symbolic.
Yeah, what you're speaking to is the fact that Cuba has to has to circumvent the embargo, and a lot of times you have third party, fourth party people getting involved in order just to get certain material goods or raw materials onto the island because they have no hay de otra. There's no other way to do it. So that's what you're speaking to. So it's a great point. Another slap in the face to not only just Cuba, but to, you know, progressives and socialists and revolutionaries all over Latin America, and even here in the diaspora. Biden announced that he would nominate Francisco Mora, a Cuban American Democrat, as U.S. ambassador to the OAS, replacing Trump's ambassador, another Cuban American by the name of Carlos Trujillo. And then this, you know, when I read this, I had to read it twice because I just couldn't believe that, you know, that this guy, Mr. Diaz would say something like this, Francisco Mora would say something like this. And actually, no, you know what? I'm not going to read the quote because I just realized it wasn't Mora. Someone else said this, but it's very telling. I guess I got to find out who the quote was from, but somebody from the Biden administration said, when Latin America or the Caribbean sneezes, Miami catches a cold. Like, are you fucking kidding me? So, you know, are you fucking kidding? You know, the inverse of what we would say, right? Like, if if the United States sneezes, you know, all of Latin America is catching the fucking flu. That's what
Walter Rodney said more broadly about Europe and the West. When the West get a cold, the global South get pneumonia and so on.
Yeah, just unbelievable. And then moving right along. One thing about the call to Governor Ron DeSantis' call on President Biden to provide internet access to the Cuban people. So if you go onto Governor DeSantis' website, he has his little piece there. And then, of course, he has, this is a name I haven't come across in a while. He has a quote by Felix Rodriguez. If folks can recall, that's the former CIA officer and the former president of the Bay of Pigs Veterans Association, and the guy who was responsible for giving the order to kill Che Guevara. So this guy reemerges for this quote. I came to the United States from Cuba in 1954 when I was 13 years old. I looked across the water and saw the horror of what Castro and the communists were doing to my beloved Cuba, and I knew I had to do something. Blah, 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 blah. But this is who Governor DeSantis decides to put in his newsletter and his piece. It's just you can't make this stuff up. In response to what happened in Cuba, again, the orchestrated protest from Miami, Russia sends humanitarian aid to Cuba, providing 1 million medical masks, 88 tons of aid, including PPE and food. As we mentioned earlier, Mexico also sends 2 ships, according to the foreign ministry, syringes, oxygen tanks, masks, milk, tuna, beans, flour, cooking and gasoline, oil, all being supplied to Cuba. Bolivia, Nicaragua, along with Vietnam, also sent aid. And then there were a few pieces in the news talking about Biden's position now on Cuba and how Cuba went from being a non-issue to something that's now up at high priority on his agenda. And it comes down to, again, crass politics, re-election, Florida's 29 electoral votes, the fact that Trump made inroads with these Cubans, were prior to that, Obama had cut into that. And you were seeing a shift. It was mostly generational, but you were seeing a slow shift towards the Democratic Party. And after Trump, it swung back. And so now here's Biden dealing with the Cuba dilemma, quote unquote. And now instead of saying, let's revisit maybe some of the stuff that Obama was trying to do, which he campaigned on. What he's doing, he's going to the right, like to the right of Trump. I mean, in many instances. So again, just really important for folks to understand that, and we had a lot of these folks who were there in DC who were on our side, who said that they voted for Biden, and we have to be very clear that, when we're talking about the lesser of the two evils, I'm sorry, it's aesthetics. And especially when we're talking about our people in the global South, in Latin America, in the Caribbean, there is no lesser of two evils. There is no lesser of two evils. The agenda is the same. The Republicans and the Democrats vote pretty much the same way and want the same thing in places like Latin America and Africa and the Asiatic world. They want the raw materials, the natural resources, and access to cheap labor, quote unquote cheap labor.
And Cuba is a perfect example of that. That it's under Biden rather than Trump that there's such an aggressive imperialist attack against the island. Showing that exactly like you say, like the U.S. Political system and the main parties there really do not give a damn. Well, they give a damn. They give a damn about their imperialist loot and their imperialist agenda. So,
absolutely. Moving on then now to Guatemala. Protests are popping up all over Guatemala. The removal of anti-corruption fighter Juan Francisco Sandoval from his post as head of the Guatemalan Special Prosecutor's Office against impunity has caused thousands of Guatemalans to hit the streets to protest. Some of the country's most powerful campesino organizations have called for a general strike, and protesters have intensified their demands now, calling for the president and attorney general to resign. What's interesting about this, and I don't know what to make of it, and I myself need to do a little bit of research for the audience. If anyone can help me, help us, let us know. both Washington D.C. and USAID are backing Sandoval, which I find extremely interesting. And I don't know why. I don't know what that's about. You have a president and an attorney general who are extremely unpopular. You have an individual by the name of Juan Francisco Sandoval, who apparently was doing his job, and yet is also getting support from the empire. So there's some stuff there that we, over here at ANTICONQUISTA need to research. I don't know if you have anything else on that, Carlos, but that whole situation is fascinating to me. I want to support the protests and especially the indigenous folks there and the different campesino organizations. But I also want to know what's the interest, what's the intrigue behind this guy Sandoval, because as we know, empire is not in Guatemala. They're not there because they're trying to do some good deed or because they want to actually be friends of the people of Guatemala.
Yeah, no, and it's worrying when the US supports you. If the US starts to support you, then you have to wonder what the fuck you're doing because yeah. But I do think, like you say, Victor, we need to do more research in terms of actual, the existing socialist, maybe leftist movement in Guatemala, and how we can come to understand Guatemala more profoundly.
It's I've been trying to, again, maybe I just need to try harder, but I've been trying to do some research there in Guatemala, and it's really hard to get really good credible news. I'll read always, again, the capitalist press, and then I'll go and I'll try to check out publications from the left, quote unquote left. And it's just really hard to get a pulse as to what's happening there in Guatemala. So yeah, definitely something we got to follow up on. In the last couple of weeks, we had the birthday of Simón Bolívar. We had the birthday of President Hugo Chavez, the late Hugo Chavez. July 19th marked the 42nd anniversary of the Sandinista Revolution in Nicaragua, where nationalist revolutionaries overthrew the Somoza dictatorship by the U.S. empire. And the Gray Zone actually did a really good piece on that. And something else that was in the news from Nicaragua. This is tied into what's our next headline. In Nicaragua, Nicaragua's granting citizenship to former Salvadoran president and vice president Salvador Sanchez Serén, a member of the FMLN. So they're granting him citizenship. The reason for that is because, and this will tie into the next headline over in El Salvador, 5 former FMLN members who had previously worked for former President Mauricio Funes' government have been arrested. Several popular resistance groups have made up of intellectuals, teachers, workers, campesinos, feminists, and other progressive forces have publicly condemned the arrest. I have seen some of the letters that have been drafted. You're seeing a lot of now protests propping up all over El Salvador against the current administration of Bukele. Moody downgraded its rating, financial rating of El Salvador. The president seems to. I did a little bit of research on him. He is this young. He's selling himself off to be this maverick of a politician who is not from the left or right and is very enigmatic. He doesn't give a lot of interviews and is obsessed with his cell phone. He's the social media selfie president with quote unquote no ideology, who is quote unquote, and again, it's a lot of rhetoric. He's implementing. I don't know what the fuck he's implementing. The people of El Salvador don't know what he's implementing. Yet he has complete control now of the Supreme Court, the legislative body, of the executive. He has a very tight circle of just him and pretty much his brothers. And now he's going after the FMLN. It's a scary situation in El Salvador. A guy who was extremely popular as this maverick, quote unquote maverick, young, politician, to all of a sudden you're seeing him take very repressive measures, very undemocratic measures. You know, the Bitcoin law that he signed, literally he talked to no one about it and just pushed it through the legislative body and made it happen. So now there's pressure mounting, and you're seeing some activity. So I'll wait for your response to that. I know I threw a lot there, but this is a situation we got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, no, I would say I don't know too much about the particular topic, but I would say that that kind of political ideology that supposedly is no political ideology, it's neither left or right, the third way is super dangerous, because it really is just right wing, and the fact that it portrays itself to be like different or somehow in the middle, or somehow doing its own thing whilst undercover, it does kind of it's a smokescreen so that they can do shit like what they're doing now. With the people of the FMLN and I assume, and I'm pretty sure I've seen some headlines about him and his family. I think one of his brothers being involved in the drug trade and so on. So these are sketchy characters with really right-wing capitalist and I'm assuming imperialist positions, allowing the empire to come and do what their will in the country.
Yeah, he's actually, for whatever it's worth, and again, the guy is such a, I'm gonna call him a weirdo. I mean, he's just a weird dude who's now finding himself into a little bit of a trouble with not just his own people, but abroad as well. So the World Bank and the IMF haven't given him any really glowing endorsements, and in fact have said to him, you got to slow down with this Bitcoin stuff. The United States government, the Biden administration, has also said that they're keeping an eye on the situation. And so
was this the same guy that wanted to make the national currency Bitcoin? Or
well, they passed a Bitcoin law. No one really, he gave a speech that was even more confusing than the actual initiative itself, because he came up with the initiative and then they had the law, it passed, he pushed it along. He didn't speak to anybody, like none of the popular group, like no one. He didn't speak to anybody, and says it was just, this is what we're going to do, this is going to be good for the country. And it was kind of like he did this whole marketing, almost like a marketing campaign, like this is going to be awesome, without providing any of the details. And then when he tried to provide the details, there was nothing there of substance, so people are more confused. So maybe
sounds like a young rich kid, kind of just doing his own thing and experimenting his own.
He was as mayor, he was a member of the FMLN. He was expelled from the FMLN for causing and sowing division. And so he just, somehow he catapulted himself, and he created this, if you will, to use the term, but he created this illusion, if you will, of him being a maverick, of being different. But nobody really knew. It's almost like Obama, when Obama ran, right, the first time, and he didn't really give you any meat and potatoes. You knew Wall Street was backing him. You knew that, right? But he spoke, very poetically about a whole bunch of stuff that nobody knew what the hell he was talking about. Like it's again, I'm not trying to compare him to Obama in the same, but there was some of that where it was just like he was quote unquote different. And so people said, all right, we're tired of the right. I hate to say this, but we're tired of FMLN. Let's give this guy a shot. And it's just been it's been this roller coaster ride and this total disaster over there in El Salvador.
And this is what happens when you say, this fight isn't about left or right. It's about, what's the famous slogan? Not left nor right. We are from the bottom coming for the top. By default, that is right. That's right wing. Like, if you're apolitical, you're not fighting the system, you're not fighting to end capitalism, I'm sorry, but
right, ideology is important, and we've used the term scientific socialism. There is a science to this. That's why they call it political. If you go and study political science, there's a science to this stuff. So to come out and say, well, I'm not from the left, I'm not from the, what does that mean? What does that mean? Right. It doesn't mean anything. Someone's saying to check out his anti-corruption accord with the OAS. His comments on the OAS are worth checking out. So, but this is the thing though. He comes out and says, so somebody like this, I'm sorry, I don't put any, I'll check him out. I will, so I'll definitely check it out, but understand I'm not putting any stock into that. He's also came out recently. I wasn't going to make this part of the headlines, but he also came out recently and said that we need to create, essentially kind of like, and invoked Simón Bolívar, like this union of Central American states. He says stuff like the guy just says stuff. There's no, I'm not, no one there on the material conditions of El Salvador are not changing. He doesn't seem to be moving forward in a progressive manner at all. He's all of a sudden running into, and again, he had very high popularity when going into office. That's turning around. He's now jailing FMLN members on based because of the fact that they're former FMLN members. So, I mean, so lawfare is being implemented again now in places like now in El Salvador. So there's nothing there that, we can go down the line with the Bitcoin. There's a bunch of stuff there. That's just none of this is adding up to anything productive or I could see if this guy had some new ideology that he was forming and then he was mixing this with that. And all of a sudden you're seeing, there's nothing there. There's literally nothing there. I mean, he's not experimenting with anything other than, just, I'm sorry, but that, está figureando. He's literally he's on his phone all day taking selfies. Literally, that's part of his thing. It's like he takes a bunch of selfies and does a bunch of stuff and says he's doing stuff, but he's not. So, yeah, I'll definitely check it out. All right, moving right along. Let's go over to Brazil. So potential coup in Brazil is the question. Major outlets such as Washington Post and even Foreign Policy are reporting that that President Jair Bolsonaro is maybe plotting a potential coup. Bolsonaro claims without evidence that the upcoming presidential elections may be marred with fraud. Roughly 20 years ago, he stated in a TV interview the following: "There's not even the slightest doubt. I would stage a coup the same day I became president. The same day. Congress doesn't work. I'm at least 90%. I'm sure that at least 90% of people would party and clap." He said that 20 years ago. He's threatening suspending elections if fraud is suspected. And Bolsonaro just a reminder, has appointed several military officials to his cabinet. So you have the Washington Post and Foreign Policy. Again, these are capitalist outlets, right? These are capitalist media outlets reporting on the potential of a Bolsonaro coup. Again, something to monitor, something to keep an eye on. Understanding also that, as we've stated here in the prior program, that Lula is now eligible to run again, and if elections were to be held today, Lula da Silva would be president of Brazil. Any thoughts on that before we move on to the next few things?
Yeah, I'll just say that it makes sense, because even though Western liberal media might be very anti-Bolsonaro, and they have been in the past, he's very much like a Trump figure. So the liberal Western media would be against him. When they realize that there's an opportunity for the left, for Lula to come back into power, then they have to keep siding with Bolsonaro. That's what
absolutely happens. Absolutely.
And also the whole thing about fraud, voters fraud. We saw it in Peru with Keiko Fujimori, who attempted to really steal the elections with a recount. So yeah, it's all part of their toolkit.
Absolutely.
Not recognizing the victories of the left.
Yeah, and again, we've mentioned this in prior programs. Lawfare got Lula, got Dilma, got Rafael Correa, got Evo Morales. All these things. And I was thinking about this earlier today. It's interesting how, the Gusanos here and people on the right want to talk about, or people now who are promoting this third way bullshit on Cuba, you know, who talk about human rights, right? They talk about human rights and rights in general. Like, where are you people when it comes to the rights of, you know, of people like Evo Morales and Rafael Correa and Lula, who represent millions of people who were democratically elected by their people? Where you know, if you're for rights, then why, you know, where are you on that? You, mum, completely mum. No one wants to talk about it. And in fact, I'll jump around real quick. More than 1,000, and I believe this was in Miami, more than 1,000 rally, you know, to protest the governments of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. And you're seeing now this very right-wing Latino movement become more and more organized. I got a phone call, excuse me, a couple of nights ago at the People's Forum in New York. They had an event at 6:30. I forget what the event was. I remember thinking, I was like, yeah, I would like to go to this, but you know, I wasn't able to go. The Gusanos showed up there in front of the People's Forum. And again, they're blocking the entrance exit, intimidating people, you know, and you're you know, the person who called me just was trying to see, like, I know you're in Jersey, but how far are you from Jersey? Like, can you come to New York? Because, you know, for security purposes, because they didn't have, and that says two things. One, these people are organizing, and two, you know, just something for further discussion, just for Latinos in general in the United States and the diaspora and even in the UK. We need to do a better job of organizing our people too, because all this stuff is going to spill over into the West. All these movements will eventually spill over. That's my prediction. They will spill over to, and you're going to have the same battles that you're that are happening in our mother countries. They're just going to spill over to the West. And so yeah, I just want to kind of provide a little bit of context to some of this stuff, because these people are now they're hell bent on, they're seeing what's happening in Latin America, and they're hell bent on stopping it. You know, and the CIA and the State Department has no problem recruiting these folks, right? So, but yeah, so moving right along, and I know we're going, you know, let's try to see if we can close this out in an hour and a half. Argentina. In Argentina, Argentina is the first country in the region to recognize non-binary people. The New York Times actually had a piece on it. A few other places reported on it as well. I thought that was significant. Carlos, I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about that before we move on to the last few things here.
No, just to say that, you know, that's the kind of progressive policies that we need in terms of sexuality and gender in Latin America. Argentina particularly is leading the way in that particular field. Also in terms of abortions, I think, when was that? A few months ago, maybe a year ago, where they voted to finally legalize abortions, and you know, the rest of Latin America is really lagging behind, even some of the leftist countries. So yeah, definitely something that we need on the continent, in our region, among our people, educate ourselves about gender inequality, gender oppression, and you know, it's something very basic. You know, it's something that is very basic, but unfortunately, because of the structures that exist, the history that exists in our country, in our region, it's something that's unacceptable to a lot of our people, unfortunately.
Absolutely. And as we wind down, this will be the last piece, and maybe we'll get into one other thing, but let's see, it's now 4:26. So I caught this headline here from the U.S. Army website. Commanding generals from U.S. Army South and Colombian Army meet in Bogota. And let's see here. The Colombian Army is a top strategic partner in Latin America, and the U.S. and Colombian armies have worked together for many years. U.S. Army South seeks to advance the partnership with Colombian Army beyond the high level of cooperation already established. And I thought, again, you know, obviously we know this, we've reported on this here, or spoken to it rather here on Nuestra America. But you know, the Colombian security forces receive millions and millions of dollars annually, every single year, And it's not just the money; it's again the technical support, the logistical support that Colombia receives. And then, so Carlos, I'll wait for your response.
Yeah, no, it's a move, a typical classic move of the US. I think it means more pressure internally for the Colombian people. It also means the US, it's not a coincidence that this is happening. Just not just this, the US Army, generals from the US Army in meeting the Colombian Army, but also the CIA chief was in Bogota very recently as well. It's not a coincidence. Pedro Castillo being voted into power only recently. Of course, the government in Venezuela that the U.S. government has been trying to overthrow for since Chavez. So this is all part of the Colombia. Unfortunately, is like they say, a strategic. The strategic country in South America for the US in order to not to combat drugs, not to I don't know what else they've or for security reasons, for their own security reasons. It's all about an aggressive stance against revolutionary movements, revolutionary governments, revolutionary movements within Colombia. Who they're trying to quash, who they're trying to destroy.
Absolutely. That's pretty much all we have. Carlos, I don't know if you wanted to touch on anything else before we end.
Yeah, I always I always emphasize that we do this. We provide information as Anticonquista because we have no interest in personal fame and in being popular on social media. We do want Anticonquista to pop off. We do want Anticonquista to be popular on social media, which I think we do have a relevance in our community and in the diaspora. And we do it because really we provide this information so that people follow us, so that people provide us with so that we can send that money back home, send it back to, as we've said before, we've now sent over $100,000 if we include what we've also sent back with Red Condor Collective to Latin America. So really, this is a project where there's no advancements of our personal careers, of our personal of ourselves as I guess revolutionary or socialist commentators here online, and we are critical. I do like to highlight, not because we're hating on our fellow lefty commentators, political commentators, and pages and so on. But unfortunately, there is an economy being built around informing people about Latin America from a leftist perspective. And what that does is it puts money in the pockets of individuals who are then, you know what money does. Money corrupts. Money, it then becomes about a personality. It becomes about, maybe they were quite good at providing information on Latin America, and then they go on to do something else. So they use our people's struggle, our people, what's happening in our region to platform themselves, and they could blow up as commentators, as journalists, and so on, and then easily just go on to something else when they get a bit bored about Latin America. So Anticonquista, I would say, is an organization that that wouldn't happen to, where our literal objective as an organization is to move forward the struggle of Latin America, revolutionary Latin Americans in the diaspora and back home. And we're going to continue doing that work whether we get money or not. But if we get money, we will provide our people back home with funds. We recently sent funds to Fuerza de la Revolución in Dominican Republic. I'm very proud of that. So yeah, that's what I would say. Please support us on our Patreon.
Absolutely, well said. And I do got to say, before joining ANTICONQUISTA, and I've been out of the movement, if you will, for a while. Like, I did a lot of stuff in my 20s. I dabbled a little bit back in my 30s. I had a child, or I didn't have a child. my ex-partner did, but I'm a father now, and so she's 8 years old now. She's getting older, and it was it was like perfect timing. Last year I was really inspired by a lot of the rebellions, and I was I decided to get back involved. My daughter's getting a little bit older now, where she's she's still a child, but it's different. It's different than when she was a baby, and so I found a home here in ANTICONQUISTA, and I gotta say I've been around different organizations, and it just never really felt like home. And ANTICONQUISTA does feel like home, and not only that, but it made me. Again, I've always considered myself a brown nationalist. And by that I mean I'm first and foremost concerned with the cause and plight of my people. And I've said this before, how I've patterned my brown nationalism after Malcolm X's black nationalism, in that sense, right? And then I got introduced to third worldism, and it was a natural. I naturally gravitated towards it, and it makes sense to me. It makes so much sense to me, and it should make sense to revolutionary Latinos and Latinas here in the United States, right? We should study what's happening in Latin America, in our mother countries, and we should defend what's happening in Latin America. We need to defend it. And then not only that, something that's really, really driving me crazy lately is the fact that, I think that there's a void in the potential for us here in the West to build a revolutionary organization from coast to coast, that is led by us. And I'm going to say this because I'm reading, going back to some of these are my good books, to Malcolm X, when he created at the end, when he created the Organization of Afro-American Unity. That's right, Brown Power. That's right. And he said, whites are welcome to help, but they cannot join. And I think that we need to create at some point. When I say we, I mean it doesn't necessarily have to be me and you, Carlos, or even ANTICONQUISTA. It doesn't even need to be we. Don't. But at some point in the history of Latinos and Latinas in diaspora, Latin Americans in diaspora, there needs to be a revolutionary, nationalist, organization or political party that organizes our people, that is for our people, led by our people. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of Latinos and Latinas in the diaspora are, and I'm going to just say it, they're falling trap and victim to these white communist organizations, and we're getting into arguments about things that don't fucking matter. I'm sorry, they just don't. Are you a Stalinist? Are you a Trotsky? What does that matter in our and you could try to we can, if you want to go ahead and debate me and tell me that these things do matter. No one in Latin America is talking about those things. I'm sorry that they're not. They're just not. They invoke.
They know more about Stalin than they do about Jose Carlos Mariátegui.
Right. It's so you listen to the discourse in Latin America, and it's about Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution and the Sandinistas and Sandino and Mariátegui and Simón Bolívar and Jose Martí. It's like, why are we getting into this stuff, the stuff that doesn't even matter, and our people are falling trap into this stuff when we should be taking care of our own. And I think about, then I start thinking about what happened in DC. I start thinking about what's going to happen to some of our people in Miami, and I just I start thinking about what happened in New York just recently, again with the People's Forum. And just look over the last 10, 20 years, and now Biden's deporting more and more people again, right? And you see how our people are under constant attack everywhere, all right? And it's not going to stop. It's just not going to stop. So, yeah, I will end the program there saying, definitely please support the work that we're doing, because again, no one here is becoming rich off of this stuff. This isn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Carl. I think there's some overhead that we, little stupid stuff that we pay. Everything else goes to Latin America. Who else is doing that stuff? So, I mean, and thank you, Carlos, for bringing up La Fuerza. That I just got to say, from me, and then this is personal. I spent time in the Dominican Republic. I know the members of La Fuerza personally. We have a headquarters. I was a member of La Fuerza. We have headquarters there in the Dominican Republic that is desperate need of repair. So this money, and these are serious revolutionaries that we just gave this money to. Gente seria, that are fighting the good fight and that need the support. So the work that we're doing, I'm proud of being a member of Anticonquista. I'm proud of the work that we're doing. I'm proud of the fact that we just sent $1,500 as a Dominican American to La Fuerza de la Revolución, a Marxist-Leninist party in the Dominican Republic. And to our people out there listening and watching, and I hope some of you start having this conversation too, and hopefully that light bulb goes on. There's a revolution happening in Latin America. What are we doing here in the United States and in Europe, in the UK? So it's just a question. It's just a question. We need to start thinking about this, and how do we integrate our movement with what's happening in Latin America? Because there needs to be some integration there as well. There is no third way. There is no third way. There is, you're either on the side of imperialism, or you're on the other side of combating imperialism. All right. And you're either for liberation and you're for our people's right to be self-determined. And there's a move towards socialism. It's happening. And no one's going to stop it. Our people are voting for socialism. Our people have fought and died for socialism, and it's not going to stop. It's just not going to stop. So there is no third way. There is, and all internal contradictions need to be resolved in-house. Mm-hmm. And this idea that, that us over here in the West in our armchair position are going to be able to resolve the problems of Cuba or of Nicaragua or Venezuela. Stop. Again, you're either using State Department talking points or you're against imperialism. There is no third way. It's very simple. It is very simple. All right. It's not, you don't need to over intellectualize this stuff. This is very simple math. And so, yeah, we'll end the program there. We really appreciate, again, all the support that we've been getting. I've been getting a lot of people hitting me up on Facebook, and I really appreciate that, saying a lot of flattering things about Anticonquista. And we really, 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 truly appreciate that, because this is truly a labor of love. We're just out here just like you folks, trying to figure this stuff out, and trying to put out good content, and trying to be part of this movement.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll say, Victor, is that also for the people listening to us, please do tell your friends. We actually make these shows into podcasts afterwards as well. We put them on SoundCloud and Spotify and so on. So do tell your friends about our show, our podcast, not just this particular show, but we have other content as well. And of course, always subscribe to our channel as well, because of course that always helps in terms of getting the word out there and stuff.
Absolutely. So to the audience, again, we appreciate y'all. Thank you, and pa'lante, mi gente. And we're gonna end up the program there.
All right, take care.